The silence in the Anthony estate was suffocating. Once it had echoed with laughter, clinking glasses, and the heavy footfalls of guests who came to court, favor with the heir to one of Nigeria's most respected oil dynasties. Now the halls were ghostly quiet. The curtains remained drawn, and the man who had once been the center of admiration sat still in a wheelchair, staring at nothing. Lucius Anthony, 30 years old, 6'2", once the glowing symbol of privilege and promise, now hidden in the shadows of his Banana Island mansion, watching his body betray him. His legs, strong pillars that once danced through boardrooms and charmed ballrooms, were now two silent limbs that refused to respond to will or strength. He didn't talk much anymore. The once charismatic heir had become a recluse. Until this morning. She arrives at noon, his mother said crisply, adjusting the diamond bracelet on her wrist, as if her announcement was simply about a new interior decorator. Your bride. Lucius didn't look at her. I didn't agree to this, he said, his voice cold but restrained. You didn't have to, she replied. You're not the CEO anymore, Lucius. Your father doesn't trust you to hold the reins, not like this. But a good political alliance could restore your seat at the board. Think of this marriage as damage control. Lucius gave a soft, joyless laugh. So you found someone just as desperate as you? His mother smirked. She's no one special. Daughter of that Idua businessman who's dying to merge with our offshore drilling arm. Second daughter. Quiet. Unremarkable. Perfect for someone in your condition. Lucius turned away, gripping the arm of his chair tightly. His pride, what remained of it, screamed in protest. But a deeper part of him, resentful, tired, broken, whispered that maybe it was better this way. At least he wouldn't be alone. Across Lagos, in a cold white room with no pictures and even less warmth, Ariana Dua stood like a statue. Sign the papers, her father barked. She looked at the contract in front of her. Marriage terms, conditions, a clause that allowed her no share in the Anthony fortune, another that transferred the control of her trust fund to her father until her duties were fulfilled. You're selling me like a commodity, she said quietly. Her stepmother scoffed. Don't be dramatic. You're doing something useful for once. Do you think your elder sister would marry a cripple? You should be grateful for the opportunity. Ariana's hand trembled as she picked up the pen. She had always been the outsider in her own family, never elegant enough, never ruthless enough, never beautiful enough. But this was more than she'd imagined. Still, she signed. The Anthony mansion stood like a fortress overlooking the Lagos lagoon, white marble reflecting the midday sun. Ariana's arrival was not marked by fanfare, just a soft knock on the door and the quiet hum of her Uber disappearing down the road. The housekeeper opened the door, expression unreadable. They're waiting. She walked through the grand hallway in a modest ivory dress, her curls pulled into a low bun. She had nothing to prove, no one to impress. Lucius saw her before she saw him. He watched from the sitting room, eyes shadowed, lips pressed tight. She was not what he expected. Not glamorous, not flirty, not even afraid. She walked into the room and looked directly at him. Her gaze didn't drop to his wheelchair. It stayed on his eyes, calm, observant, as if she were the one evaluating him. He cleared his throat. You're early. I'm punctual. Their first words weren't warm. They weren't even civil, but they weren't empty. Lucius gestured toward the chair opposite him with a lazy flick of his hand. She sat, folding her hands on her lap. I assume you were dragged into this too? He asked, voice laced with bitterness. She didn't answer immediately. I wasn't given a choice, but I'm here now. So are you. Silence stretched between them. Lucius studied her again. Her face was simple but elegant. No makeup, no pretense. Her posture didn't betray fear, only calm resolve. And somehow that unsettled him more. You'll have a room upstairs, separate from mine, he muttered. You can do what you want. Just be at events when you're required. We don't have to pretend in private. I wasn't planning to, she said. He blinked, surprised. You're not afraid of me? No. You think I'm pathetic? No. You pity me. A pause. Not yet. That night, Ariana unpacked in the guest wing, surrounded by silence. The room was beautiful. High ceilings, soft lighting, tasteful decor, but sterile. It had the feel of a hotel suite designed for a show. She opened the curtains, letting the moonlight in, and stared down at the shimmering water of the lagoon below. She had married a stranger, a broken, angry man, a man whose own family discarded him the moment he lost his strength. But she didn't feel sorry for him. Something told her there was more beneath that cold exterior, something fractured but not destroyed. And perhaps she had more power in this house than she realized. The following morning greeted Ariana with an eerie stillness. The Anthony mansion, for all its size and splendor, felt like a museum, grand but lifeless. The walls were adorned with classic Nigerian art, portraits of the Anthony lineage, and gleaming chandeliers imported from Italy. But there was no laughter, no footsteps, no voices, only silence. Ariana sat on the edge of the oversized bed, already dressed in a cream blouse and tailored brown trousers. Her hair was neatly twisted into a side bun, and her makeup remained minimal, just enough to look put together. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, not even her husband. She stepped out into the hallway and followed the long corridor that led to the main floor. The scent of polished mahogany and lavender oil lingered in the air. As she descended the staircase, she spotted one of the maids hurrying out of sight, her eyes avoiding contact. Odd. Even the staff avoided her. Ariana entered the dining room where a lavish breakfast had been laid out. Fruit platters, toast, scrambled eggs, pancakes, even a fresh fruit smoothie. Yet, the long table was empty. "Who is this for?" she asked aloud. No one answered. Then she heard the subtle creak of wheels. Lucius. He rolled in, dressed in a crisp navy shirt, sleeves rolled up, the top button undone. His jaw was clean-shaven today. Despite his wheelchair, he still radiated quiet power. But his eyes, those sharp, piercing eyes, looked exhausted. He didn't glance her way, just wheeled himself to the head of the table. Ariana waited a moment, then walked over and sat halfway down the table, keeping her distance. "You don't need to dress up," Lucius said flatly, finally breaking the silence. She met his gaze. "I dress for myself." A flicker of something passed through his expression. Surprise, maybe, but it vanished quickly. "Have you met the staff yet?" she asked. "They won't talk to you," he replied, picking up a fork. "They don't talk to anyone. They're paid well to stay silent and mind their business. That's the way I like it." Ariana picked at her toast. "You've built a prison with high ceilings, and you've walked into it willingly." She didn't flinch. "No, I was pushed." Lucius set his fork down, suddenly irritated by her calm. "You think you understand me?" he asked, his voice cold. "No," she replied, "but I've seen enough pain in my own house to recognize when someone's drowning quietly." He chuckled without humor. "You've known me for what, 18 hours? Don't start acting like you've unlocked some hidden part of me." Ariana took a sip of her smoothie. "You make it too easy. Your silence is loud, Lucius." Her words lingered between them. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't even kind. But it was true. And that truth disarmed him in a way he hated. Later that day, Ariana explored the house. Each room was pristine, impeccable, museum-level immaculate, but untouched, soulless. There was a library with floor-to-ceiling shelves, most books never opened, a swimming pool that hadn't seen a splash in months, a garden overgrown with silence, save for the sound of distant birds. She stumbled upon a locked room at the far end of the west wing, polished black doors with an engraved gold handle. As she reached for it, a voice behind her startled her. "Don't go in there." "Lucius." She turned around to find him watching her from the corridor. He hadn't used his chair. He was on a motorized mobility device today, barely audible. "What's in there?" she asked. He hesitated, then said flatly, "A mistake." She didn't press further. By evening, Ariana had started organizing the kitchen, much to the disapproval of the head housekeeper, Madame Rita. "Madam, with respect, it is not your place," Rita whispered urgently. "This house has rules. The late Madam, his grandmother, established them." "I'm not breaking rules," Ariana replied gently. "I'm trying to feel human in this place. That's all." The older woman blinked at her, something soft flickering behind her stern gaze. "Then be careful," she murmured before walking off. Lucius watched Ariana from the shadows that night. She stood at the balcony just outside her room, arms crossed, the wind teasing her braids. Below them, Lagos shimmered with nightlights, fast cars, music in the distance, and the gentle movement of the lagoon. He hadn't intended to watch her, but he did. There was something unsettling about her presence. She didn't seek his approval. She didn't try to fix him. She didn't pity him. And that made her dangerous, because he didn't know how to fight someone who wasn't trying to win. Later in the privacy of his bedroom, Lucius stared at his legs. He hated looking at them. Still scarred, still weak, but they moved slightly now. Not much, just enough to frustrate him. His physiotherapist had said, with enough effort and surgery, he might one day walk again. But Lucius had stopped believing that. It felt easier to remain broken than to hope and be disappointed. Yet that night, for the first time in months, he whispered aloud, "She's not afraid of me." The third morning in the Anthony mansion began like the rest, unnervingly quiet. Ariana had woken early, already dressed in a soft blue dress that fell gracefully past her knees. She sat in the sunroom, nursing a warm cup of hibiscus tea, flipping through a worn journal she carried from her childhood. Her thoughts were far from the mansion's marble halls. They hovered somewhere between the ache in her chest and the questions in her mind. Why had Lucius given up? The man the world once adored, the vibrant heir to the Anthony empire, was a shell. Not because of his wheelchair, but because he had allowed life to shrink him. She wasn't angry, but she was disappointed. When she entered the library later that afternoon, she found Lucius already there. His sleeves rolled up, his shirt slightly wrinkled, and a crystal tumbler of something golden resting on the side table beside him. He looked up at the sound of her heels and frowned. "Looking for another room to rearrange?" he asked dryly. "No," she said, approaching a nearby shelf. "I came for a book. There are thousands. Then it shouldn't bother you if I pick one." She reached for a collection of poems. Something about the quiet rebellion in her movements set him off. "Do you always act like you belong everywhere?" he snapped. She turned slowly, book in hand. "I don't act like I belong. I just refuse to shrink." Lucius's jaw clenched. "You're only here because two families needed to trade pawns. Don't mistake this house for your stage." Ariana's voice stayed calm. "Maybe, but I'm still a person, and I won't live like a ghost just because you've chosen to haunt your own life." The words struck deep, too deep. Lucius wheeled forward slightly, eyes flashing. "You think I chose this? You think I wanted to wake up in a twisted wreck, with blood pooling under me and my spine half shattered? You think I enjoy being a charity case in my own family?" "No," she said softly, "but I think you chose to give up after that." A tense silence fell between them. Lucius stared at her, heart pounding. No one had ever spoken to him like this. Not his therapist, not his mother, not even his best friend. Everyone either tiptoed around him or vanished. But she didn't flinch. She stood there, calm, grounded, unafraid of his storm. "I know what it means to feel discarded," Ariana continued, "but I didn't stop living." He hated the way her words stirred something in him. "Is that what you're trying to do? Fix me?" he asked, bitter. "No, that's your job," she said. "I'm just the only one who's not pretending you're already dead." Later that evening, Lucius sat alone on the rooftop terrace. It was the one part of the house untouched by staff, his private escape. He watched the city skyline. The glittering lights of Victoria Island blinked in the distance. Somewhere, music floated from a party far off. A different life, a different world. Her voice haunted him. You chose to give up. Maybe she was right. Maybe he had wrapped himself in bitterness because it was easier than hope. Maybe this woman, this stranger, had just held up a mirror he hadn't dared look into. Ariana, meanwhile, stood in the kitchen, helping the cook prepare yam porridge. Madame Rita watched from the corner, arms folded, eyes narrowed with a strange mix of irritation and admiration. "You'll burn your fingers," she muttered. Ariana smiled. Better that than letting them stiffen from disuse. The older woman huffed. "You're not what I expected." "Neither is he," Ariana whispered. Madame Rita paused. "Don't let him ruin you." "I don't plan to, but I'm also not here to run from him." The housekeeper looked at her then, truly looked at her, and for the first time gave her a nod. That night, as Ariana walked past Lucius's room, she paused. The door was slightly open. She could see him seated on the edge of his bed, shirtless, staring at his legs. A therapist's resistance band lay limp on the floor beside him. She didn't say anything, but Lucius sensed her presence. "Why do you care?" he asked quietly, not turning. A long pause. Then she replied, "Because you're not just broken bones and bitterness, Lucius. You're still here. That means there's still something worth saving." He closed his eyes. And for the first time in a long while, he believed her. Rain pelted the glass windows of the mansion like 1,000 tiny fists, steady and relentless. Ariana sat at the far end of the library, curled up in a velvet armchair, with a legal pad resting on her lap. She had been reading about the Anthony Corporation's recent board shakeups, how Lucius had been quietly removed from day-to-day operations after his accident. No press statement, no formal handover, just silence. It struck her how quickly power could vanish when vulnerability entered the picture. Lucius Anthony hadn't just lost his legs. He had lost everything the world associated with being a man: control, respect, command. And now all that remained was bitterness. Or so everyone thought. But Ariana was beginning to see otherwise. That afternoon, Lucius had a physiotherapy session in the private gym on the second floor. Ariana wasn't meant to know, but she had memorized his schedule, and she had questions no one seemed eager to answer. She crept to the far hallway and pressed herself gently against the wall, close enough to hear but not be seen. Inside the gym, the therapist's voice echoed. "You're making progress, Lucius. You moved your foot on your own today. That's more than we saw 3 months ago." Lucius exhaled sharply. "Progress doesn't mean anything if I'm still stuck in this chair." "It means everything. With surgery, and if you stop skipping half your routines." "I'm not interested in false hope." "Then why are you still here, Lucius?" the therapist snapped for the first time. A heavy silence followed. Then came Lucius's broken whisper. "Because I want to believe it matters. That I matter." Ariana's chest tightened. She backed away, guilt creeping in. She hadn't expected to hear that. That night, over a quiet dinner, Ariana finally asked what had been sitting in her throat for days. "Lucius, what really happened the day of the accident?" His fork paused mid-air. The silence was sharp. He didn't answer. "I read the press release," she continued, "but it was vague. Brake failure on the Lekki Bridge. That's all it said. No details. No follow-up." He set the fork down. "I was coming back from a meeting with 2 board members," he said slowly. "They wanted me to sell off a land project I had personally approved, said it was a waste of resources. I refused. That evening, the brakes failed on my private car." Ariana's eyes narrowed. "Was it ever investigated?" Lucius looked away. "The internal team called it mechanical failure. The CCTV footage of the garage mysteriously vanished. That was the end of it." "You think someone did it on purpose?" He didn't answer, but his silence screamed louder than a confession. Later, while Lucius rested in the study, Ariana went into the garage under the pretense of needing a charger from the housekeeper's quarters. She found the maintenance logs from the estate vehicles tucked into a dusty cabinet. Her eyes scanned quickly. Lucius's car service cleared 5 days before the crash. Brakes replaced, no issues noted. She blinked. Replaced? She jotted the mechanic's name. Then on a hunch, she searched the driver roster from the same week. His regular driver had been swapped. And the temporary one? No longer employed. No contact number listed. Her blood ran cold. This wasn't just an accident. It was a cover-up. Someone wanted Lucius silenced, removed, and they'd almost succeeded. She stormed back into the mansion and straight to the study. Lucius sat with a tumbler of whiskey in hand, eyes glazed. "Who changed your driver that week?" she asked, holding up the logbook. He turned to her, confused. "What?" "Your driver was swapped days before the crash. The mechanic who cleared your car vanished 2 weeks later." "Someone cleaned this up, Lucius." He stared at her, face pale. "I didn't want to believe it," he murmured. "My own family, my own board." Ariana walked to him and knelt in front of his chair. "Then stop pretending you're broken beyond repair, because whoever tried to destroy you is still out there. And you sitting in this house, giving up on yourself, is exactly what they wanted." Lucius was silent. Her words cut deeper than any blade. "Get up," she whispered. "If not today, then tomorrow. If not for yourself, then for the company. For justice. For every damn thing they stole from you." He clenched his jaw. "How do you know I can?" he asked quietly. She reached forward, touched his leg gently, and he flinched. "I've seen it. You already moved your foot. You're healing. Slowly. But you are." Their eyes locked. "I'll help you," she promised. "Not because I pity you, but because I believe in the man you used to be, and the one you still could become." Lucius couldn't breathe for a moment. No one, not a single person, had looked him in the eye and said that since the accident. That night, while the rain poured outside and the city glowed in distant blur, Lucius sat on the edge of his bed. The band Ariana had seen earlier in the gym lay beside him. He picked it up, tied it around his foot, and began, slowly, deliberately, one painful stretch at a time. The first night was the hardest. Lucius sat on the yoga mat in the private gym, shirt clinging to his skin, breath shallow. Sweat glistened across his temples. His legs, wrapped in resistance bands, trembled beneath him, like two reluctant strangers he was learning to speak to again. Ariana knelt beside him, towel in hand, eyes calm but focused. "You're not going to break," she said gently. "You don't know that." Lucius gritted through clenched teeth. "No," she replied, "but I know you've survived worse." He dropped his head, fists clenched on the mat. It wasn't just the physical pain, it was the humiliation, the memory of who he used to be, the sharp contrast between the man who once ran triathlons and the one who now struggled to flex a foot. But she didn't flinch. She didn't offer false comfort or tears. She simply placed a hand on his shoulder, firm, steady, and said, "Again." And he did. The nightly sessions became routine. They met at 10:30 p.m., long after the staff had retreated and the mansion had gone quiet. Ariana would arrive with 2 bottles of water, a rolled mat, and determination that often outmatched his. At first, Lucius resisted. Not with words, but with sarcasm, with silence, with clenched jaws and withheld effort. But Ariana was unmoved. "You're not going to push me away by acting like a jerk," she told him on the third night, tightening the band around his thigh. "I'm not acting," he muttered. "Then be a jerk who walks again." He snorted. The first time she made him laugh. It surprised them both. On the 5th night, as he held himself upright with trembling arms, Ariana supported his back. "You're improving," she whispered. He breathed hard. "You're lying." She gently tapped his foot. It moved. "Don't make me call your therapist to prove it." Lucius shook his head, voice hoarse. "Why are you doing this, Ariana? What's in it for you?" She paused. The silence between them stretched like a thread on fire. Then softly, "Because no one ever helped me when I was drowning, and I know what it's like to need someone." Lucius turned slightly, his eyes catching hers in the low light. That was the first time he noticed how deeply warm her gaze was. Not soft, not naive, just real. One night during their cool-down, he asked, "Why do you let them treat you like an afterthought?" She looked up from rolling the mat. "You mean my family?" He nodded. Ariana leaned against the wall, folding her arms. "Because I used to think being silent would make me valuable. If I didn't fight, didn't complain, they'd see I was worth loving." Lucius frowned. "That didn't work." "No," she said quietly. "It didn't. So now I've stopped waiting for their love. I'm building something else, even if it's in this house, even if it starts with helping you." Lucius felt the air shift. He saw her differently now, not as the quiet girl forced into a contract, but as a woman who had learned to survive in silence, a woman who had chosen kindness over bitterness, a woman who, day by day, was making him believe again. By the end of the second week, Lucius could lift his leg halfway off the mat. It wasn't dramatic, no fireworks, no applause, but when it happened, he let out a sharp breath, and Ariana smiled. "You did it." He didn't reply. Instead, he closed his eyes and leaned back on his palms, letting the warmth of that small victory soak in. Ariana handed him a towel. "You're going to walk again." Lucius looked at her. "I believe you." She smiled softly. "That's the first step." One night after a particularly grueling session, Ariana stayed behind while Lucius took a shower. She sat on the floor of the gym, stretching her legs when her phone buzzed. A text from her sister. "Heard you're living in that haunted house? Poor you, don't get attached. He'll dump you once he can walk again." Ariana stared at it for a moment, then deleted the message without replying. Lucius wasn't like her father or her sister. He didn't pity her. He didn't use her as a pawn. He simply saw her. And she was starting to see him too. Not the heir, not the patient, but the man beneath the grief. Later that night, she passed by his room and saw the door ajar. He sat by the window, legs propped on a cushion, a blanket across his lap. "You should sleep," she said gently. "I will," he replied without turning. "I was just thinking." "About?" He hesitated. "About how I haven't looked forward to anything in months, until now." Ariana's breath caught. Then, slowly, she stepped inside, pulled the blanket higher over his legs, and whispered, "Then let's keep going." Lucius turned his head, eyes meeting hers under the moonlight. And for once, there was no bitterness in his expression. Just quiet hope. Lucius didn't tell her the night it happened. It was just past midnight. Rain whispered against the mansion windows, and Ariana had already gone to bed after another physiotherapy session. But Lucius stayed awake. Something in his spirit stirred the ache of months buried in silence. Anger and helplessness had been replaced by something raw, alive. He wheeled himself to the edge of his bed, hands gripping the frame, sweat on his brow. He closed his eyes, summoned everything within him, and pushed. First a tremble in his calves, then a strain in his thighs. Pain surged like fire. He grunted, jaw clenched. And then he rose, wobbly, barely stable, but upright, standing, breathless. He stood for exactly 11 seconds before collapsing back into the chair. But it was enough. The ground beneath him hadn't swallowed him whole. For the first time in nearly a year, Lucius Anthony stood tall, and he smiled. He didn't tell Ariana the next morning either. Instead, he acted like nothing had changed. When she came down for breakfast, he was already seated in his usual spot, sipping black coffee. "You're early," she said. He smirked. "You're late." She tilted her head. "Something's different." "I combed my hair," he replied, deadpan. But his eyes gave him away. They sparkled. Just a little. Not like a miracle had occurred, but like something had returned. Something he hadn't felt in ages. Control. That evening, Ariana received an invitation delivered by a sleek courier in a black suit. An Anthony Corporation gala. Formal, exclusive, attended by board members, investors, and media houses. She read the gold embossed card slowly. "You're expected to attend," the attached note read. No signature. She walked into the study where Lucius sat reading. "You invited me?" she asked. Lucius glanced up. "You're my wife. People will start asking if they never see your face." She studied him. "Is this about business or something else?" "Both." The gala was held at the Grand Orchid Hotel in Victoria Island. The venue was lit like a dream, golden chandeliers, champagne towers, silk tablecloths, and Lagos's elite dressed to the nines. Ariana arrived in a deep emerald gown with sheer sleeves and a low back. Her hair was swept into a high twist, lips painted in wine red. When she stepped into the ballroom, heads turned, not because she was flashy, but because she radiated quiet elegance. But whispers followed. "Who is she?" "She's the contract wife. I heard she was a backup bride, second choice. She's not even from the main Moore line." Ariana kept walking, chin high, shoulders straight. She was used to being overlooked. Tonight she was simply refusing to be invisible. Lucius hadn't arrived yet, at least not publicly. Ariana mingled, mostly alone, until she found herself near a table of Anthony Corporation executives. One of them, a tall man with a pompous voice, chuckled loudly. "Ah, Mrs. Anthony. I didn't recognize you without the shadow of your husband's chair." A few men chuckled around him. Ariana smiled politely. "Maybe that's because you've only ever looked down on people." He blinked. "Excuse me?" "Down," she repeated, voice calm. "Because the only thing lower than your ethics is your respect for those who don't kneel before your wallet." Silence. A few nearby guests turned. "You think being a sympathy bride gives you the right to talk back?" he sneered. That's when a firm voice cut through the air. "No, but being my wife does." Gasps erupted. Ariana turned, and there he was, Lucius Anthony, standing, dressed in a black tuxedo. No wheelchair, no cane, no assistant. Just him, tall, solid, powerful. The entire room froze. The man who had been declared broken of business liability now stood with all the strength of a king reclaiming his throne. He walked slowly but surely across the room toward Ariana. The pompous executive stepped back. Lucius didn't spare him a glance. Instead, he walked up to his wife, gently placed his hand on the small of her back, and whispered, "Thank you for not letting me disappear." Ariana's throat tightened, but she didn't cry. She simply smiled and said, "About time." The rest of the night changed everything. News reporters swarmed discreetly. Pictures were taken. Lucius Anthony walks again trended on Nigerian Twitter by midnight. But the bigger story? He stood for his wife. When a popular socialite tried to corner him, later one who had once ghosted him, after his accident, Lucius gave her a polite smile. "I don't do rewinds," he said. "I'm moving forward now, with her." And when Ariana rejoined him near the terrace, he laced his fingers into hers, held them up boldly for the cameras, and posed. No shame, no secrecy, just strength and gratitude. That night, back in the mansion, Lucius collapsed onto the couch, exhausted. Ariana knelt beside him and unfastened his shoes gently. "You walked," she whispered. "I did. You stood up, for me." Lucius leaned his head back. "You helped me remember I could." She smiled. "Next time, give a girl some warning." "I nearly passed out." He chuckled, then looked at her, really looked. "I want to earn this marriage," he said suddenly. She blinked. "What?" "I don't want it to be a transaction anymore. I want to be your husband, fully, proudly, honestly." Ariana's eyes welled with tears she didn't want to show. "Then stand by me," she whispered, "every day, just like today." He took her hand. And for the first time, not out of need, but out of love. The news spread like wildfire. Lucius Anthony walks again. The man the board once cast aside. The heir many whispered was finished. The billionaire who had vanished into shadow had returned to the world standing tall, with a woman beside him that no one had seen coming. Within 48 hours, the Anthony estate phone lines buzzed with invitations, press requests, event appearances, and from women who had once ghosted, ignored, or betrayed Lucius after the accident. Now they were crawling back. Ariana noticed the shift almost immediately. At brunch the next day, Lucius scrolled through his phone, unread messages piling up. She peeked at the screen, names she recognized from old tabloid articles. Mirabelle and Sofer, Tonya Adediba, Fumi Banks, all high society women who had flirted with the idea of being the next Mrs. Anthony until the accident. Now they wanted dinner. Apologies, second chances. Ignore them, Ariana said lightly, sipping her tea. Lucius looked up. You're not even going to ask? No, because I trust you. He raised a brow. Even after everything you know about me? She smiled faintly, especially because of everything I know now. Lucius stared at her for a long moment, then slowly slid the phone away, screen down. But the world outside wasn't as peaceful. At a charity gala hosted 3 days later, Ariana found herself swarmed by cold smiles and colder questions. So, Lucius is walking again. Must be nice. How long did it take you to train him back into the spotlight? Was this your plan all along? Secure the will before he got better? She answered them all with grace. But the final blow came from Mirabelle and Sofer, tall and stunning, in a crimson dress that demanded attention. Standing just a few inches away, she whispered into Ariana's ear with a sickening smile. Lucius doesn't belong with women like you. When he's back to his full self, he'll remember what he used to want. And it wasn't plain girls from forgotten families. Ariana's heart thudded once, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned in and whispered back, then it's a good thing he's building something new. And it doesn't include women stuck in the past. That night, back at the mansion, Lucius found her on the balcony, quiet and still, staring at the lights of Victoria Island. He joined her, a blanket draped over one shoulder. They said things tonight, didn't they? He asked softly. Ariana nodded, arms folded. They said worse before, she replied, but it hits different now. Lucius took a deep breath. You don't have to fight them. She looked at him. I'm not. I'm fighting the part of me that wants to believe them. He stepped closer. You don't think I see you? She looked away. You think I didn't notice the way you've carried this house on your back for months? The way you held me together when I was falling apart? You're not my nurse, Ariana. You're my anchor. Her lips parted slightly, words caught in her throat. Lucius stepped in front of her, brushing a stray curl from her cheek. Don't let them make you question what we've built, he whispered, because I never did. Ariana closed her eyes. It's hard when you see women who are everything the world celebrates. Lucius leaned in. And yet I'd still choose the one who stood by me when I had nothing. Later that week, he received a lunch invitation from Tonya Adediba, former model, investment princess, known for her ruthless charm. He declined, twice. But on the third attempt, she showed up at the Anthony Corporation building, uninvited. Lucius was in a boardroom meeting when she waltzed in, hugging him like they were old lovers. Lucius, you look incredible. I can't believe you're standing again. We should celebrate. He stepped back, frowning. Tonya, I'm in a meeting. She laughed lightly, tossing her silk scarf over one shoulder. Oh, please, I'll wait. We have so much to catch up on. His COO and board members all froze, sensing tension. Lucius gave her one look. There's nothing to catch up on. Oh, come on, I was there for you. No, you were there before things got hard, he said calmly, voice sharp as glass, when the world saw me as a king. But the moment I became inconvenient, you vanished. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. You don't get to reappear when the lights come back on. Tonya's smile faltered. Now, Lucius added, if you'd like to support the foundation my wife is building, we're accepting donations. But if this visit is for anything else, security will see you out. Gasps, silence, a storm of whispers. But Lucius didn't care. That night, he came home to find Ariana sitting on the floor of her room, surrounded by sketches and documents, her plans for the women's shelter she had quietly begun designing in the East. He sat beside her wordlessly. "I want to give them somewhere to go," she said. "Women like me, who were forgotten, used, dismissed." He reached for one of the drawings and smiled. "You've always been more than what they see." She turned to him. "And you've always been more than what they lost." They didn't need grand speeches. They simply sat there, a CEO and his quiet queen, rebuilding everything the world once tried to destroy. It started with a misplaced envelope. Ariana had gone into the upstairs study that afternoon, searching for an old file she needed for her foundation's NGO registration. The mahogany drawers were always neatly organized. Lucius was meticulous, but one folder sat slightly askew at the back of the lowest cabinet. It was labeled "More Anthony Agreement." Her heart paused. She sat down, pulling it toward her. Her hands trembled before she even opened it, as if her spirit already knew this wasn't something she was meant to see. Inside were contract documents, not the official marriage agreements she had signed under her father's supervision. These were different, older, colder. Business merger terms, family asset exchanges, a clause detailing a dowry-like financial transfer to the Moore family contingent upon Ariana's marriage. And then her breath caught. Subject is to marry Lucius Anthony before Q2 of fiscal year. Once formalized, Anthony Holdings will approve the offshore land acquisition rights for Moore Maritime Africa. Her hands went numb. It wasn't just a contract marriage. It was a business deal, and her entire life had been negotiated like stock. Tears blurred her vision. She flipped to the final page. Signed by her father. And worse, Lucius's mother. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Memories came crashing in. Her father forcing her to sign, her stepmother smirking, Lucius's mother saying she's no one special. And now it all made sense. Her voice hadn't mattered. Her body, her life, her name had all been traded like currency. That night, she didn't attend dinner. She stayed in her room, staring at the city lights, her heart breaking all over again. Lucius knocked once. "Ariana?" Silence. Opened the door. Still nothing. She knew if she saw him, his face, his eyes, she might scream, or cry, or fall apart completely. He waited a moment longer, then left. The next morning, she was gone. No note, no suitcase. Just absence. Lucius stood at the foot of her empty bed, jaw clenched. He found the folder on her desk. His heart sank. He didn't know she had seen it. Didn't know that his mother had pulled the strings that orchestrated her pain. He dropped into the nearest chair, burying his face in his hands. Ariana didn't return to her father's house. She didn't go to the foundation site either. Instead, she checked into a small boutique hotel in Ikoyi under a different name. The room was modest, quiet, the opposite of the mansion. Here she could breathe. But sleep didn't come. She kept replaying his face, his voice, every moment they had shared. Was any of it real? Was she just another strategic piece in Lucius Anthony's grand rebuild? She wanted to hate him, but she couldn't, because deep down she knew he was just as trapped as she had been. 3 days later, a knock sounded on her door. She opened it and froze. Lucius stood there. No driver, no suit, just jeans, a charcoal gray sweater, and a face etched with regret. "I didn't know," he said before she could speak. "Not until a few months after the wedding. My mother kept it from me, said it was good for the company. I was still in recovery. I thought she just wanted me stable. I didn't know you were," he swallowed, used. Ariana didn't speak. "I should have told you the moment I found out," he said softly, "but I was scared you'd walk away. And by then, I didn't want this to be just a contract anymore." Her lips trembled. "You still should have told me," she whispered. "I know." Silence fell. Then he stepped forward, held out a small folded paper. She opened it. It was a legal release and annulment fully signed. No terms, no conditions. You're free, Ariana, he said. You don't owe me anything. Tears stung her eyes. Why would you do this? Because I love you, he said simply. And if that means letting you go, I will. She stepped back, heart pounding. He turned to leave. But her voice stopped him. Lucius, wait. He turned, pain etched across his face. She stepped closer. You gave me freedom, she said quietly. But I choose to stay. He blinked. I choose you, not because of contracts, not because of guilt, but because somewhere between your silence and your storms, I found a man I believe in. His shoulders sagged as if years of pain melted in that moment. She walked into his arms, and he held her tightly, not with desperation, but with gratitude, with love. The Anthony boardroom had never been this quiet. 12 men and women, seasoned executives, old family allies, and fresh investors sat stiffly around the marble table, murmurs rising as the door at the far end swung open. In walked Lucius Anthony, but this time not in a wheelchair, not escorted, not angry. He walked tall, calm, commanding, in a perfectly tailored black suit, no cane, no assistant, and no apologies. Ariana walked beside him, dressed in a champagne blazer dress with bold gold accents. Her hand rested gently on his arm. She didn't say a word, but her presence was loud. She wasn't just a contract wife anymore. She was his partner, his choice, and everyone in that room saw it. Thank you all for coming, Lucius began, standing at the head of the table. Let's get right to it. He laid down the first folder. Effective immediately, I'm reclaiming my position as CEO of Anthony Holdings. The board is to be restructured. The members who backed illegal offshore deals during my recovery are hereby dismissed. Gasps. Lucius raised a brow. Oh yes, we found the files. Cleaned them up too. He slid another folder toward the general counsel. Evidence of misappropriated funds and a driver's statement. The one who mysteriously disappeared after my accident. His voice dropped a tone. He was paid to walk away. The room went dead silent. Lucius continued, cool and unwavering. I'm not here to play safe. I'm here to restore what this name used to mean, legacy, not leverage. He looked up, eyes sweeping across the room. And if anyone has a problem with that, there's the door. When the meeting ended, Ariana followed him onto the rooftop terrace of the headquarters. The city skyline stretched before them, golden, wide, alive. Lucius let out a long breath. Do you regret coming back? She asked. He turned to her. No, he said softly, because this time, I came back as who I really am. She smiled, stepping closer. And who is that? He wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her against him. A man who finally stopped letting pain define him, and a man in love with the woman who helped him find the light again. Ariana's eyes welled, but she held his gaze. I'm proud of you, Lucius. He kissed her gently. Not rushed, not hidden. Just them. The weeks that followed were transformative. Lucius was everywhere. TV interviews, business expos, investor meetings. But every time Ariana was by his side, not behind him, beside him. Her foundation officially launched the Adua Project, offering vocational training and mental health support to women who had survived abuse, rejection, or forced marriages. The first center opened in Lekki, funded entirely by Lucius. At the ribbon cutting, Ariana gave her first public speech. I used to think love was something you waited for, but I've learned that sometimes love is something you choose to build, even from broken pieces. Lucius watched from the front row, pride glowing in his eyes. The press ate it up. The city buzzed. But all Lucius cared about was the quiet smile Ariana gave him when she walked off the stage and into his arms. Back at the mansion one night, Lucius sat in the garden under fairy lights Ariana had installed. She joined him, barefoot, in a silk robe, hair down. He handed her a small velvet box. She raised a brow. Is this what I think it is? Lucius smirked. Open it. Inside was a gold band, elegant, engraved on the inside, by choice, not by force. Ariana's breath hitched. You already married me once, she whispered. I want to do it right this time, he said. Not for business, not for revenge, for us. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheek. Yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, then kissed it. And the man who had once thought he'd never stand again, now knelt, not out of weakness, but out of love. The sun poured golden light over the rooftop of the Monarch Tower in Ikoyi, where a stunning glass platform had been transformed into something out of a dream. White orchids twisted around golden arches. A Lagos skyline kissed by sunset shimmered in the distance, and at the center of it all stood Lucius Anthony waiting. This time it wasn't for the world. It wasn't for legacy. It was for her. Below, the city buzzed with stories, but none louder than the one unfolding above. The once broken heir reclaims his throne, hand in hand with the woman who helped him rise. The press had been banned. The guest list was short, no suits were traded, no deals negotiated. This wasn't a contract. This was a choice, and everyone in attendance knew it. The music shifted as Ariana Idua appeared at the entrance. She wore an off-shoulder white satin gown, the bodice adorned with hand-sewn pearls, the train flowing behind her like moonlight. Her braids were twisted into a low bun, with tiny golden clips sparkling like stars. Lucius's breath caught in his throat. As she walked toward him, barefoot by request, every step said what neither had dared to say in the past. I choose you. The officiant asked the usual questions, but Lucius didn't wait. I knew the first time you challenged me, when everyone else stayed silent. You were different, he said. You didn't fix me. You saw me, and because of you, I saw myself again. He pulled out a slim gold ring. This isn't a promise to love you one day. It's a vow that I already do. Ariana's eyes glistened as she took a shaky breath. I thought I was unwanted, forgotten, but you made me feel seen, not because you needed me, but because you chose me. I'm not your crutch, Lucius. I'm your home. Their fingers intertwined as they slipped rings onto each other's hands. When the kiss came, it wasn't dramatic. It was deeply certain. The reception followed under warm Lagos night skies. String lights danced across the air. Laughter floated between jazz melodies and clinking glasses. Guests toasted, danced, and took quiet photos that would later flood the internet despite the press ban. But Lucius and Ariana stayed tucked together in their own orbit, whispering things only they would remember. Hours later, back at the mansion, Ariana stepped into their bedroom, now fully theirs, and found rose petals on the bed, candles flickering in soft rhythm. Lucius was already inside, his tie undone, barefoot, his eyes soft. No speeches? She teased, slipping off her heels. I'm trying to behave, he murmured, drawing her close. She smiled. Don't. Their kiss was slow, their laughter real, their embrace unhurried. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. A new empire built on strength and softness. Not forged by family or force, but by two people who chose to stay when it would have been easier to run. The Anthony estate was no longer silent. Laughter drifted through the halls like music. Sunlight spilled generously across the marble floors, and the scent of fresh lilies, Ariana's favorite, welcomed every guest who walked through the grand doors. In the private garden at the back, Ariana Idua Anthony stood in a white silk jumpsuit, clipboard in hand, directing final touches for the second annual Idua Foundation Gala. Her presence was quiet but magnetic. Volunteers listened, guests smiled, and even the vendors, used to chaotic hosts, respected her stillness. She doesn't even raise her voice, someone whispered. She doesn't need to, another replied. She is the voice. Ariana moved like a queen now, not with arrogance, but with the confidence of someone who had earned every inch of respect on her name. Inside the estate, Lucius Anthony adjusted the collar of his midnight blue tux. A year ago, he couldn't stand without assistance. Now he was walking 3 miles every morning before most of Lagos even woke. He watched his wife from the French windows, her poise, her grace, the way her hands moved like she was conducting an orchestra of progress. "She's not just your wife anymore, boss," his COO chuckled behind him. "She's a brand." Lucius smiled, pride softening his features. "She's more than that. She's the reason." That evening, the garden came alive with soft jazz, golden lanterns, and Lagos elite dressed in black tie fashion. But every spotlight gravitated to Ariana. When she stepped on stage to speak, Lucius sat in the front row, his eyes never leaving her. "This foundation was born from pain," Ariana began. "But like anything real, it grew with love, not pity. I was once a forgotten daughter. Today I stand as a woman whose story didn't end in survival, but in transformation." Applause thundered. Lucius stood, joining her on stage, and whispered for only her to hear, "You shine so brightly I could go blind." She turned slightly. "Good. Then let the world see." They held hands as fireworks burst behind them, the city watching. No longer the forgotten, no longer the broken. They were rebuilt, together.